When I first saw the construction barges drifting toward my island, I thought it was a mistake. After all, who in their right mind would build cabins on private land they didn't own? The morning mist rolled thick over Lake Wren, turning the surface into a gray mirror. I sat on my dock with a mug of coffee, staring at the silhouettes, cranes, lumber stacks, trucks, all crawling onto my property. I'd bought Blackstone Isle 15 years ago, back when it was little more than a rocky bump with some wild pines and an old hunter's shack. I had turned it into my retreat, a quiet place away from everything and everyone, especially from the kind of people who think they own the lake just because their mansions have a view of it. Those people called themselves the Wren Lake Homeowners Association, or the HOA, a collection of smug retirees, weekend lawyers, and real estate busybodies who treated the lake like their private chessboard. They believed money and influence could redraw property lines like pencil marks on a map, and in their arrogance, they made the worst mistake of their lives. They thought my island was part of their lakefront development project. I remember that first week clearly. They arrived with authority, permits pinned to clipboards, flags marking spots for cabin 1 through cabin 23. When I rode over to ask what in hell they were doing, a man in a bright orange vest barely looked up from his blueprint. "This is community development property," he said flatly. "The Wren Lake HOA has jurisdiction under the Lakeside Revitalization Initiative. Community development." I echoed, "You mean my backyard?" He smirked. "If you have a complaint, take it up with the board. We're on schedule." And that's when I knew it wasn't a mistake. It was theft. Organized, deliberate, and stupidly confident theft. For the next few weeks, I watched. I said nothing. I didn't file a complaint. I didn't call the sheriff. I let them pour foundations, raise cabins, install their fancy docks and fire pits. The island buzzed with construction from dawn to dusk. They brought in electricity from the mainland, even had the nerve to rename the place Wren Lake Shores Extension. But I waited, because revenge isn't about reacting. It's about patience, the kind that turns anger into something sharp and unbreakable. Every night, I sat on my porch with my old dog, Chief, watching the lights across the lake flicker from their new investment. The water carried the sounds of saws and laughter. They were building a dream on my soil, and I was already imagining how it would feel when it all came crashing down. The HOA board held their first public meeting about the cabins a month later in the Wren Lake Country Club ballroom. I showed up in jeans and a flannel, the kind of outfit that made people underestimate you. Their president, a silver-haired man named Arthur Vale, was giving a presentation to a crowd of eager residents. 23 luxury cabins on Blackstone Isle, he said, gesturing to a slideshow. A shared community retreat, exclusively for HOA members and their guests. We project a 40% increase in property values. Polite applause filled the room. I leaned against the back wall, arms crossed. When he finished, I raised my hand. "Yes, sir, question in the back." Vale said, smiling like a politician. "Yeah," I said slowly, letting my voice carry. "You said Blackstone Isle. You mean my island." The crowd turned. Vale's smile faltered just a fraction. "I'm sorry. Who are you?" "Name's Jack Holloway," I said. "Bought that island 15 years ago from the county. Got the deed framed over my fireplace. Been paying the taxes ever since. So tell me, Arthur, how exactly did the HOA get the right to build cabins on my land?" The silence that followed was heavy enough to drown in. You could see the confusion spreading like cracks through the audience. Vale cleared his throat. "Mr. Holloway, that can't be correct. Our development maps show the island under community jurisdiction." I smiled, slow and steady. "Then maybe your maps are as fake as your permits." And I walked out. 2 days later, I received a letter from the HOA's lawyer accusing me of harassment and obstruction of a community project. They warned me to cease and desist interfering with association property. I almost laughed. Instead, I mailed them a certified copy of my original property deed, complete with county seal, coordinates, and the date of purchase. I attached a friendly note. "Since you're so fond of building, I figured I'd help you construct a legal defense. You'll need it." For a while, I heard nothing. The cabins kept going up. Word spread that the HOA was planning to rent them out to vacationers at $600 a night. They even started marketing brochures, "Escape to the tranquility of Wren Lake shores." That was fine. Let them finish. Let them pour every dollar, every hour, every drop of sweat into something that wasn't theirs. Because when it came time to take it back, I wanted it to hurt. By midsummer, the island looked like a postcard. Cedar cabins nestled among pines, connected by winding paths and lit by soft amber lamps. They'd built a communal lodge, even a boathouse. From a distance, it was beautiful. Up close, it was infuriating. One afternoon, while walking chief near the shore, I saw Vale standing on the dock with a group of investors. He was laughing, his arms sweeping proudly across the horizon. See that? That's the future of lakeside living. Private, exclusive, serene. I rowed closer, pretending to fish. When they noticed me, Vale's smile disappeared. "You again," he said sharply. "I thought we made it clear you're not welcome here." I cast my line into the water. "That's funny. My deed says otherwise." He stepped forward. "Listen, Holloway, the HOA acquired development rights under the county's shoreline revitalization plan. Your claim doesn't supersede that." "Oh, I think it does," I said, meeting his gaze. "You might want to ask your lawyer what happens when someone builds on private property without consent." He scoffed. "You won't win. Even if you're right, you can't stop progress." "Maybe not," I said, reeling in the line, "but I can own it." That night, I opened my safe. Inside was a deed, yellowed, creased, but still official. Alongside it, I kept every letter, every email, every photograph I'd taken of their construction. Evidence. Proof. My lawyer, a sharp-tongued woman named Rachel Klein, looked over everything the next morning. After half an hour, she sat back in her chair and whistled softly. "Jack, this is open and shut. They built an entire development on your land. You can claim ownership of every structure, every improvement. Legally, it's yours. Even the cabins. Especially the cabins. So what's the next move?" I asked. Rachel smiled. "We let them finish. Then we go to court." And so I waited. Summer turned to fall. The cabins opened to guests, and the HOA started bragging online about their exclusive island resort. I watched quietly as their arrogance climbed higher than their roofs. They were celebrating theft, and I was about to make them pay for every nail, every beam, every drop of paint. One night, as a wind whipped across the lake, I stood on my dock, staring at the golden glow from the island's windows. Chief barked softly, sensing my tension. "It's almost time," I told him. "They think they won." I smiled then, a slow, dangerous smile that only comes when you know justice is about to be served. Because the thing about water is, it remembers. The currents know who belongs. And soon, the court would too. When the day finally came, and the judge asked me to produce proof of ownership, I reached into my briefcase, pulled out the original deed, and laid it on the table. The room went silent. The HOA's lawyers froze. And Arthur Vale's face drained of color like a man watching his empire sink beneath the waves. But that is where the real story begins. The courtroom smelled faintly of pine cleaner and coffee, small-town justice with a polished veneer. I sat at the plaintiff's table, the deed to Blackstone Isle spread neatly before me, the county seal glinting under the fluorescent lights. Across the aisle sat the Wren Lake HOA's board, Arthur Vale and his pack of smug executives, flanked by two high-priced attorneys who looked like they billed by the breath. The judge, a gray-haired woman named Eleanor Briggs, adjusted her glasses and tapped her pen against the desk. "Let's get started," she said. "Case number 24 to 5671, Holloway versus Wren Lake Homeowners Association." I'd been waiting for this day since the first nail hit my island soil. Rachel Klein stood beside me, calm as a winter lake. "Your Honor," she began, "this is a straightforward property dispute. My client, Mr. Holloway, has held legal ownership of Blackstone Isle since 2009. The defendants, under the Wren Lake HOA, have constructed 23 residential cabins and associated infrastructure on that land without his consent. We are seeking full restoration of property rights, damages for trespass, and transfer of all improvements to my client's ownership. Vale's lawyer, a slick man with a silk tie, jumped up. Your Honor, this is absurd. The HOA developed that land under the county's revitalization program, which classifies Blackstone Isle as part of the Wren Lake Shared District. Rachel raised an eyebrow. We'll see about that. The judge nodded. Mr. Holloway, please take the stand. As I swore the oath and sat down, I could feel every eye in the courtroom fixed on me. Rachel started simple. Mr. Holloway, how long have you owned Blackstone Isle? 15 years, I said. Bought it from the county in 2009. Paid in full. Got the deed recorded. Been paying property taxes ever since. She handed me a document. Is this the original deed? Yes. And what does it state? That Blackstone Isle, parcel 118B, located within Lake Wren, belongs solely to me, Jack Holloway. The judge nodded slowly. Rachel walked the deed over to her, and I watched as the seal caught the light again. The sound of paper sliding across the bench was the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. Vale's lawyer stood. Objection, Your Honor. The Revitalization Initiative overrides prior private claims within the Shared Waterway District. Rachel didn't even flinch. Objection to his objection. Nonsense. The initiative applies to shoreline maintenance, not to independent parcels with pre-existing deeds. The county clerk's office confirmed that the HOA's permit application never included parcel 118B. In fact, they illegally extended development onto private land. Judge Briggs looked over her glasses. Mr. Vale, is that true? Arthur Vale shifted in his chair, his confidence unraveling thread by thread. Your Honor, the maps we were given. Answer the question. The judge interrupted. He hesitated. We may have misunderstood the boundary markers. Mistakenly. Rachel said sharply, you built 23 cabins, a lodge, and a marina on someone else's property. That's not a mistake. That's trespass. The judge scribbled something on her notepad. Vale's lawyer stood again, desperate. Your Honor, my client invested over $2 million in the development. Surely Mr. Holloway doesn't intend to claim ownership of all those improvements. Rachel smiled, thin and deadly. Actually, that's exactly what the law entitles him to. Under common law accession, improvements made on private land without consent belong to the landowner. Every cabin, dock, and nail belongs to Mr. Holloway. The silence that followed was delicious. The defense scrambled, calling county officials, waving half-baked permits and maps that fell apart under cross-examination. Rachel tore through them like a hawk through paper. Every witness the HOA brought only made things worse, each confirming, inadvertently, that the board had ignored warnings about ownership. By noon, the judge looked tired of hearing excuses. She turned to Vale. Mr. Vale, I see here you personally signed off on the final phase of construction. Yes, he said, sweat beading on his forehead. And you were informed multiple times that Mr. Holloway claimed ownership of the land. Well, yes, but we believed. Believed? The judge's tone was ice. Belief doesn't override a registered deed, Mr. Vale. You could have heard a pin drop. Rachel stood again, her voice calm but sharp. Your Honor, my client has endured months of trespassing, unauthorized construction, and defamation. He was mocked and threatened with legal action by this HOA when he rightfully objected. We asked the court not only to restore ownership, but to grant damages and legal fees, because this wasn't an accident. It was arrogance. Vale's lawyer slumped into his chair. When the judge recessed for lunch, I stepped outside into the crisp fall air. Rachel joined me by the courthouse steps, sipping coffee from a paper cup. You did great in there, she said. I just told the truth, I replied. She smiled. Sometimes that's enough. They thought you'd be some cranky hermit without the means to fight back. They didn't expect you to be patient. I looked across the street, where Vale and his team huddled in frantic conversation. Let them sweat, I said quietly. They haven't realized yet. They built my future for me. Rachel grinned. That's one way to put it. When the court reconvened, the verdict came faster than I expected. Judge Briggs cleared her throat. Having reviewed the evidence, the court finds that Parcel 118B, known as Blackstone Isle, is the sole property of Mr. Jack Holloway. The Wren Lake Homeowners Association unlawfully constructed developments on this private land. All improvements are hereby transferred to Mr. Holloway's ownership. Furthermore, the defendants are ordered to pay damages and legal costs totaling $2.4 million for trespass and unauthorized use. The sound that followed was half gasp, half disbelief. Vale's face went white. His lawyer whispered something frantically, but it didn't matter. The gavel had already come down. I exhaled slowly. Months of anger, quiet nights of planning, all crystallized into that single moment of justice. The judge wasn't done. "Mr. Vale," she said, "you may consider yourself fortunate that Mr. Holloway isn't pursuing criminal charges. I suggest you and your board vacate the island immediately." Vale opened his mouth, but no words came out. 2 weeks later, I stood on the same dock where I'd watched those first construction barges arrive. Only this time, the island was mine again, not just in name, but in every board, every window, every flickering cabin light. The cabins were beautiful. They had built them well. I walked through each one, the smell of pine and varnish still fresh. The irony wasn't lost on me. An entire luxury retreat, handed to me gift-wrapped by the very people who tried to steal it. I decided not to sell. No, this place had become more than a getaway. It was a story, a statement carved into the land itself. Instead, I put up a single wooden sign at the dock. "Private property. Trespassers will be owned." That line made Rachel laugh when I showed her. "Petty," she said, "but perfect." By winter, word of the court case had spread. The HOA crumbled under lawsuits from its own members. Homeowners wanted their fees refunded. Investors wanted compensation. Vale resigned from the board and moved away quietly. His empire of lakefront authority dissolved like frost in the sun. And me? I stayed. Blackstone Isle became my home again, though now it bore the marks of their arrogance. The cabins, the lodge, the paths. I rented a few out to travelers under a new name, the Deed Retreat. People loved the story, how a stubborn man with patience outsmarted an entire HOA. It became local legend. Every guest who stayed asked the same question eventually. Did you really let them build it all before suing them? I'd smile, pour another cup of coffee, and answer, of course, revenge is best served furnished. But sometimes, late at night, I'd sit on the porch and look across the water, thinking of the day the barges first appeared. How close I came to losing everything I'd built, and how that loss turned into something bigger. Chief would lie at my feet, tail thumping softly, the moonlight shimmering across the lake. "You know, boy," I'd say, "funny how people think ownership is just paper and ink. But the land remembers. The water knows who belongs." He'd bark once, like he agreed. And in that stillness, I'd hear the faint echo of hammers and saws, the ghosts of the thieves who built my fortune. And I'd smile, knowing justice had already written the ending. Because in the end, they built their own downfall, nail by nail. And I just let them.